going to turn this into a trike. Now it begins. Welcome to Adventures with Motive, the trike build. Well, I'll say trike build, it's a trike conversion. I had this axle sitting behind the shed. It came off a previous trike. I have actually lost the original prop to this because I think I used it on another vehicle for another setup. But what I do have, as I picked up this morning, is a 93-94 Ford Transit Smiley prop shaft, and the flange fits that Escort perfectly. Well, I say perfectly, the cardboard cutout that I took with me was a perfect match, but the rest of it is as yet unseen. So yeah, this has got to be, all this rubbish has got to be removed. We've got to get it down to a bare axle. That's probably going to take the best part of a full pack of 10 slitting discs. That axle has got to find its way to this machine, which I have mixed emotions about, because I was planning to do my bike test, but everything's gone up in price, so I've decided to put that on hold, and I really don't want this sitting in the garden rotten. I just don't. I want it ridden. And this chap I know has been talking to me for the best part of probably 3 years about me building a trike for him, and I made it quite clear I don't build them from people anymore. However, this is not a cash deal, and we're going to do a straight swap. And so I will be building this up into a trike, and I will be MOTing it, registering it as a trike with DVLA, and the day I get the logbook back with trike written on it is the day I walk over to his house, drop the keys in his hand, sign the book over on both machines, and the deal is set in stone. That's the plan. Now, what have I got to do to this? I said I'd give him a fresh coat of paint because the paint is bad on this. It's flaking off everywhere. It's just not very good at all, really. We're going to give this frame, without removing too much, we're going to give this frame a touch up in all the areas where it needs it to de-rust. I've got to build some kind of panel over the back to hide all this frame because he doesn't want the rear seat reinstalled or reinstated. The exhaust pipes have got to be shifted. There's a lot of stone chips on them, unfortunately, that are now starting to go rusty. So we need to get some polish on that and get them back to how they're supposed to be. They're made in Italy, those. But they've got to go at a different angle because the axle will stick out and they will be in the way. On the front, he said he wanted a visor of some description. And also, he wants the original handlebars that this machine came with put back on. Which I have to agree is a good idea. Other than that, there isn't really much that needs to be done. So really, what we're looking at is a swing arm conversion. So we've got to take that swing arm off and weigh up in our heads to whether I build a fresh swing arm from scratch, which I'm rather partial to the idea of, or I chop that one up and convert that over. I would actually like to give him all the parts that I take off, so when he is done with riding, the option of selling it will increase the value because he'll have the bike part, see, so it could go back to a motorcycle very easily. I have a few ideas in my head. I'm not saying I'll be able to pull this off, but I'd like to be able to get the prop shaft, original prop shaft, from there, welded up to a Transit prop shaft, which I'm going to source out to an engineering shop. I'm not going to tackle that job myself because my lathe is not accurate enough, and I don't want this component breaking and killing the old boy. But what I also want to do is I want to try, if I can, is use the original rubber gaiter here and put a large sleeve over the top of the prop shaft, and then on the prop shaft, on the axle, on this axle, I would then like to weld onto this section here another piece of pipe that's larger coming off there. So there'll be like a circle cut out, welded on with a piece of pipe over the top of that. So I can run a gaiter from this side to that side, and then that way we can keep everything oiled up. The purpose for that is this is a wet prop shaft on these machines. I don't know specifically the ins and outs of the Virago, but I can say on things like GSXs, GTR 1000s and so forth, all those prop shaft driven machines have got oil actually in the swing arm itself, and it lubricates the union joint here, the universal joint that's hidden in this one. For some reason there's no clamp round this, but then there's not much room. This does feel a little weak and feels like it might need replacing, but we'll look at that at a later date. So that is pretty much what is going on. Okay, there is a wheel ramp under there with some mahogany to protect the engine casing. I have strapped it down both sides and it ain't going nowhere. So even in the harshest of wind, that'll hold. The back wheel is off the ground, so it's not supporting, as far as I know anyway. Yeah, it's hovering. At worst we can always put another ratchet at the front to bring that front down, which would probably be a good idea actually. We can go on there down to the bottom frames somewhere. So now we need to, actually I need to strap that front down, thinking about it. And then we'll need to start removing all the back end. So the swing arm has got to come off. I think that finned thing is a rectifier, so that'll have to be undone. Number plate, wire disconnection. Oh, before she disappears I need some masking tape for labelling. She's going to get me some masking tape, I just asked her. So yeah, shocks, they've got to come off. I'm going to leave the mudguard where it is for the moment because it's not in my way, and I don't know what the chap wants to do about that at the moment. The exhausts are going to stay where they are for the moment, but they may very well come off because they're going to be in the way. I've got to modify that somehow, and I'm not sure how that's going to happen at the moment. Italian aftermarkets which are corroding up really badly because the chrome is rubbish on them. What else have we got? Side panels need to come off so I can access through those holes for the swing arm, and then the swing arm itself, which is a bolt just down there, they need to come out each side, and then we can drop that swing arm and then we can inspect and find out which is going to be the best route to go, whether it's a homemade swing arm. The wheel is out, and I've been looking at this swing arm and I'm looking at the rot that's going on in there. Now I suspect it's just surface. The thing is I can't get to it to clean it. How on earth we're going to get that axle mounted to that system? As the old saying go, best of British. Woo. Pretty much the end of phase one. We've now established what we're doing. Well, no, we haven't. I'll rephrase that. We've now established what we ain't even established anything. I'm talking shit again. Anyway, that's phase one out of the way. Now we've got to establish how we're going to go about doing this. And I've only got one idea going on in my head at the moment. I think this is welded, so it might be strong enough. I mean, there's a fairly chunky bit of steel, but I bet you that will bend very easily. So I'm going to get some flat bar and I'm going to add another piece to that to thicken it up, or I'm going to try and get one whole piece. But laminating metal, in my opinion, is actually stronger sometimes. So I might put an extra bit in there. So we're going to cut all the way around there. And we're going to lose this entire arm, and we're going to cut around there. So we're going to lose all of this here. We don't want none of it. It's just not needed. Then we're going to remove that tab, but we are going to keep this, but I may spin it the other way or slightly to an angle because I need that flange for the gator to go back on, because I do need to cover that universal joint that's hidden behind there. However, I can't rely on this being strong enough. It's really thin and flimsy. Now I did think maybe we could put something behind this, but you know what, none of that's going to work really. So what I might do instead is, once I've got rid of that and I've got that, I might just put a piece of flat bar across here and join it on somewhere. Maybe bring it across to here, you know, so it's connected. On the other side of this, there's going to be another hole drilled with another piece of that put on, so I can run a bolt out to about here. As we're not using the centre stand, oh sorry, the side stand and the stand switch, I'm thinking about coming off this
with a tube or a block, and then bringing that height up to here, and then drilling a new hole here, joining everything together with that piece of circular tin that you saw, which I'm going to reinforce as well, and try and make a new swing arm this side, which will go in because we've got the shocks to go back on, and then we'll come off that edge to the end. And also the center of the prop shaft, center of the swing arm, is going to be plated up the same as this is, but differently. That makes sense, does it? Basically, the prop's got to go off to an angle, which you can see is demonstrated here the way I've got these lined up. So when I put this on, I need to have another fat piece of tube run across the middle, not for strength, but just so I can get the props to work, because we've got this prop shaft to sort out. As you can see, it's quite substantial, but the beauty is I've got a really good engineering friend who runs an engineering firm in Ipswich, and he can probably get rid of that tube, and altogether there's a big block of steel hidden in there, and we can bore into that. So that will be bolted onto there, you see, and we're going to have to cut this down anyway, so we can actually bore this into the prop shaft, which will probably be about here somewhere. And what I might actually do is get him to widen up this piece of steel, because it's a very thin piece and it's heat treated, so you go putting welding heat into that, you can actually weaken, make it brittle, and we don't want this snapping. But we also want to hide this into a tube as well. The tube really does need to be removable, or at least half of it anyway. Or does it? Well, no, I suppose it don't. As long as I can get to the nuts and bolts this end, then there's no reason why that can't be welded into the UJ. So it does mean then, in order to access that, we've got to make this axle removable. There's no way about it. Now, I don't like using other people's work, but if I can strengthen these tubes up and put gussets across, I don't mind. So we can get some of this steel down here, the box, and we'll lay that across, weld that all in, clean all this welding up here. This is not my work, it's somebody else's work. And we can put gussets across, fill that all in, and then we can get some fresh steel, which I plan on getting thicker than this stuff. That's about 6mm. I'm going to try and get some 10mm plate, re-drill the holes, and then the new tubings that go on will go onto those plates there. So the first to do it, trust me, but I have cut the cap off that holds the prop shaft. The prop shaft from the Ford Transit, which is down there, got chopped because I needed the steel. I have bought some steel today, came in at 40 quid, big old 4-inch piece, which I'm going to make up a bracket to go on here to hide it, to hide that part, so I can put a gaiter over the top, and we will also expand this to a larger diameter as well. So what we'll probably get is a filler neck rubber from a lorry, because they have very large diameter I can't say it, polyurethane gaiters. We've got some real big thick steel. Now you saw that, rubbish, perfect, 1/2 inch. I've drilled a 16mm hole, I've reamed it. That bolt is nice, it's nice, it's not over tight, it's not loose, it doesn't wobble, it fits almost perfect. So that's what we've got so far. The next part of this is to cut this piece of tubing. We're going to cut an angle across there, and we will literally weld it to the outside edge. We are going to try and duplicate how this was put together, but we're going to make that leg go further out to that angle. Unfortunately, I can't put the axle line here dead smack where the wheel was, because the prop shaft angle, we don't want those knuckles whacking apart. Too much angle on those UJs will destroy the UJs, I guarantee it. So we're going to try and just bring it back a tiny bit, but not too much. I've counted the ratios, a 2:1 on this. On the bike it was a 3:1, so we're going to go with larger tyres than what was originally on the bike to try and compensate for that extra turn that's required. Otherwise we're going to be revving out at at a low end and getting nowhere at top end, and we don't want that. Loads of acceleration is great, but we need cruising speed. The bike itself, I've been told, was about 80 mile an hour, so 80, 85, something like that. I think it was mentioned to me. The guy never used to thrash it anyway, so we don't really know the true speed of this Virago. Yeah, this guy who wants it, he's just using it for shopping and the odd rally show, local rally show. So we do not need massive amount of top end, but we need it comfortable. I mean, we would like to travel at about 70 mile an hour, 75, 80 for overtaking. I know what the speed limit is, but we all do it at some point. I don't care who you are. I bet you've speeded at some point in your life. So yeah. Okay, let me explain this. Unlike all the other trikes that I've built, I cannot just cut steel, align, bolt stuff to the floor, tack weld the metal to the brackets of the floor to make cradles and the rest of it. I can't do that on this because of the way the swing arm is set up. They're really awkward. This is really playing my skull big time. So I've had to resort to option 2, which is to revert back to my boat building days and actually lay everything out on the table. That way I can get more accurate measurements, and we should get this right. Now we've got a centre line here. That's the centre of the axle. This point here is where the props mount, so this tube has got to be pretty well lined up with that, and at the moment it isn't, so that already proves by doing it my old way that weren't going to work. I've drawn the centre on the axle pin. I've already put it back in the bike, worked out where I think the centre of that pivot point is, or that swivel point, swing point. I've already marked that. We've already cut the steel plate, and to be honest with you, we're not quite lining up where I need it. I need that a little further over this way, so we're just not quite there yet. I will need to put that bolt back in and draw a line on the opposite side that screws to, just to see how much thread sticks out, because I am using a thicker piece of steel this side. I was going to counter bore it, but I haven't got any way to counter bore it, so I can't. And I can't get my hands on a longer bolt. I wouldn't even know where to start on that one, so I'm just going to see where that ends, and what I'll probably end up doing when we bolt it back together is we'll cut a piece of metal out, 2mm, drill a hole, lay it over the top, and we'll bend the prong over on one side, but instead of bending it round into a notch which we had on the previous one, we'll drill a hole with a thread and we'll run a small bolt through that, so it stops that from coming undone. There's no chance of that happening. As long as we've got enough thread going inside there, we should be fine. If we do not, then I am going to have to counter bore it, because there is at least 1/4 of an inch on this plate more than there is on the previous one that was on there. Now I did lay this on the bike just to see how it worked, and it was poking through all the way. We don't want it going too far because we're changing the angle of the prop shaft, and we don't want it hitting or whacking into that bolt once we do everything up. So that's where we're at the moment. Now these shaded areas is the tubes that's going to hold the bracket. Basically it's these points here. I've got one there and I've got one there. The plate that I'm planning to put on is going to bolt from roughly about here and come to about there, but these bars that I'm about to fix will go onto this side here. The reason why they don't go over that side is you've got to put the wheel on, and there'll be a little bit of wheel coming in and the bars might hit the rim. We don't want that, that's bad. So if we keep to this side for the moment, but make the plate big enough to go all the way up to that weld edge there, which has been done by spinning the steel together and heating it up. It's not actually a regular weld, I can't remember the term. We can then add a bar or a gusset to that to go across, that's smaller, which will add rigidity to the framework. Now we've figured out a centre. I know there's so many lines, but I know which one I'm following. We've got the other tubes there. We've marked that point there on here, so we know where the prop's going to be sitting, roughly. I have given myself 3 inches tolerance on the swing arm length, We're not going to get this exactly where the back wheel would normally sit. That will be a tiny bit more length on it. The bad side to that is it's going to affect the weight on the forks a little bit, because it's going to upset the engine balance, because there'll be more weight on the front than there will be at the back. Not by a lot. But the worst thing, the other thing is the shock absorbers might have to be changed if they don't hold that extra length, because you're effectively lengthening the stroke of the lever system from where the center line is from the spindle to the center line of the bolt that holds the suspension on, which I can't remember what it's called. So yeah, we don't want to make it too long, because it will play havoc later, because we're going to put the shock absorbers in the exact spot of where they were on the actual swing arm of the motorcycle. So I've given myself a maximum tolerance of about 4 inches. I'd like to keep it under 2 if I can, but we've got 4 to play with, and I don't think we can exceed that by a millimetre if we can help it. So the first thing to do, get that counter board out to that line and no further. The reason being is I've just offered it all back up, and that's how much thread gets used that's got a screw into there. Now there's a lot more thread in there than there is there. We need that to stop there. So if we counter bore that out to that line, we've still got the strength of the steel, but we'll have the strength of the thread going back inside that, and unfortunately we need it. Right guys, this is what I've done. I have managed to, basically using the shaping machine, scratch along the side of there to get it down to that level that you see the bolt sitting in. Then I got a large washer, welded that around, and the simple reason is that I don't have any means to counterbore. So I've then welded around the outside edge to get it back to, you know, add more meat to the metal. We've put that shape in, which is what was on the previous one, and we've put the notch in for the locking bolt. I would say all in on this one piece, we're probably close to 6 hours to get that to where we got it, and I must admit I'm quite pleased with that. The locking tabs will work just like it did when it was a motorcycle, and we've got all of this surface area here, plus that extra thickness, which is now doubled in thickness, which we can now use as an area to put the next process in, which is the leg for that side. What I have decided to do is to drill through this tube so I can duplicate that hole there on the other side, and then we're going to make a bracket come off the frame where we can put the 16mm rose joint on, so we can stick the other leg onto that. What we'll do after that, once we've got both legs made up, I'll tack weld them on so I know exactly where they're going to sit, and I'll then start putting all the strengtheners in place, and then we'll do the A-frames that go above to triangulate that, and then we'll bring the axle back on the table, stack everything up, and then build the frame at the back, and then crisscross across, plate off the centre very similar to how it was done here, and that's pretty much where we're heading with it. I had a friend up, because next I've got to do is put a bridge block across there, and I'm thinking this, cut that out, put it across there. I've got to work the measurements out based on that one because I need clearance from underneath, but I can't see it not working. The only problem is when I do the brace, I've got to pull everything out because all the metal is in the way, which is a bit of a nightmare. I put this one on the inside edge because of the tubing that's got to go on the back, but now I've kind of cocked myself up here a bit, so I might have to remove that. And 5 inches from that outside edge to the centre, so it's another 5 this side, so we are actually level with that. I could in theory put my piece of tubing on there for the other leg, but here's the problem. This stuff's microscopic thin, it ain't going to be strong enough, ain't going to be anywhere close to being strong enough, and the pivot point I want to use is this side and not this side, so that leaves me with a bit of a problem. I have welded that on, as you can see, and I have super reinforced all of this. This is now one solid block all the way around. That metal there, there's 2 pieces of that cut laid in, and I've welded behind, filleted it, filled it there, filleted it in, and this is it. it's now joined to the framework, and apart from it's a cup of coffee time, that fits a treat. However, the tube that was on here before was a lot thinner than this. So because we're going to weld a plate on here to start that leg, I think I might actually cut all the way down on one side and maybe take the roof off there as well, because we really don't need all of that. This is the shaft that goes in and there's nothing to it. Let me demonstrate. At worst it'll be more over that side than it will anywhere else. So I think with that in mind, because we've got to build off this, I might actually get a piece of box steel and cut it into angle, cut out there, all the way up there, so it comes off that line here, which will give me a bit more clearance, because I was going to have to cut that out anyway, because that ain't going to work at all. That tube is massive, but I need the massive end here so I can couple up. I don't necessarily need it at, you know, at the rest of those points. I could have cut the tube off the old one, to be honest, thinking about it now, because I'm kind of making that up as I go along. I know roughly how it's got to go, but yeah, but it's all on. I had to cut the centre out and space it, because when I welded the box up inside it pulled it too tight, and I didn't want to grind anything away, but that's worked, and we're going to plate over the top anyway, because we've got to strengthen that prop shaft tube up ready for the leg on the other side. And the last test fit, my back's gone, hurts like hell. Yeah, after the last test fit we discovered that this part of the tubing here was hitting the underside of the seat, and because I very stupidly forgot to take measurements of the swing arm to where it would, you know, sit as a normal sort of seating position, I decided to make that part of the tube flat, similar to the diameter of the original swing arm. So we should now avoid all of that. But not only that have we done, that we've also added 6mm plate, I think, on the top, and 12mm plate on the side, the same as what this stuff here is. The purpose of that is the legs. We've got to put the legs on at some point. We ain't got any choice on that, so we've got to come off one side, come off the other. I'm trying to get it to the point where from the centre line, which according to my measurements, and I've got a feeling they're wrong, but according to my measurements, where the centre casing of the engine is, and I think that's the centre of the bike, I hope it is, we need to measure 5 inches from there to there, 5 inches from there to wherever that takes me. So that line's got to be followed through all the way down to here, and then I need to find an equal 5 from either side, and at the moment I don't know where that is. Kind of debating at the moment whether to weld a plate down a triangulation here and then another one of these plates across there, because I've got a feeling I'll be all the way down here. So to make the legs equal I may have to come off here as well. We can always put gussets on this side, gussets on that side. So yeah, okay, so that part of the frame that I'm building is now welded to the bench. It's welded that side and clamped heavily on this side so it can't move. So now I need to put my lines back and then work out where the steel plating is going to go on the axle. Now, as you know, we've measured this all out. So if I get everything right, this should work out perfectly. We know where the centre is of the diff, because the diff is slightly offset. They always are, well, they're not always, but this particular one is. So when it comes to making up the plates to go back on here, we should be exactly where we need to be, so we can then lower the axle on here, block it, stack it, get it level, raise that up in the air, measure across, position it gently, making sure that it's propped underneath at all angles, and then we can weld those tubes on permanently. And then what we'll do is we'll take it outside, we'll take the other drum off, we'll take that outside, we'll put it on the frame temporarily, and then we'll put some axle stands under it to see how it all works out, because the idea is, because the next part after that is working out where the shocks are going to sit they really do need to sit on the actual beams that are coming out if I want that to sit exactly where it used to sit. The only thing that's going to be different is the wheel sizes. I think the car wheels are going to be slightly larger than the original motorcycle wheel, remembering that we have got 3:1 ratio on the bike wheel, 2:1 ratio on the car axle. So I need to improve that ratio by putting slightly larger tyres on, otherwise we're going to rev the guts out of it and go nowhere. She'll probably full rev bottom out at 50 mile an hour, and that's not what we want. We want at least 75, 80. To me that's acceptable on a 500. My CX500 had a 2.5 BMW limiter's slip axle on the back, independent, and I could get that thing up that 80 mile an hour, and everybody kept saying to me it's too heavy, won't work. Yeah, I got it up there, it did work, I knew it would. Take my word for it. That one measures 9.60 to that bottom piece, 9.30 to that one. I mean, what, quarter of a mil, half a mil, roughly, something like that? I mean, that's not worth arguing over. Did it with a vernier. I'm happy with that. Very happy with that. Okay, so I think I'm going to close this video, keep it short and sweet. Stage 3 will be the next one, and that will be cutting the legs and welding onto there, bringing it up to no further than that line on this inside edge here. I have put keep out zone, so we'll try and follow that line down to there. We will try and follow that line down to there. The only thing that is going to be, see, because the piece is straight there, it's angled there, it just means the legs can be the same length and they should stick out at the same distance, because I've measured from the center 4 3/4, 4 3/4, because I thought it was 5 and in, it's 4 3/4 each side. As long as the tubing ends at that point there and ends at that point there. So basically my welding mass is there and my welding mass is there. They should come out absolutely smack bang symmetrical if I've got my measurements right. I pray that I have. Oh, right, this is one very brain taxing conversion. It really is. I'm just wondering how many builders would actually just try and slap the metal together while it's in situ. I mean, I'm being as methodical as I can just to make sure that nothing occurs that puts the chap in danger, even though I'll be riding this around myself for a week, making sure nothing breaks. I mean, he's been round, he's had a look, he's quite impressed and very happy. So I said this should be finished by next week. He thought I meant the whole trike. I said no, just the swing arm, and then I've got to add all the other bits on. I've given myself 3 months to build it, but I'm really hoping I can get it done in like I don't know, 6 weeks, 6-7 weeks is what I'm hoping for. It's all down to how much work I need to do, because I've given him the options of paint colour as well. The frame is going to be a little trickier because it's a bit crap in places and it needs a respray really, and I can't get the engine out because my back's no good. So I'm going to have to mask up as much as I can and sand back as much as I can, and just hope for the best really on that. This swing arm I'm going to primer this up, and then I'm going to stick bed liner all over it to protect it, because it's a good stone chip resistant paint. And I think it will look good. I just wished I could do the rest of the frame in it, because I think that it would look good all over that frame. But it's not going to be possible at all. I've laid pieces of wood here because they're about the same height as that. So we'll weld onto there and we'll bring them up to that line. But we're going to actually overhang that line, but we'll mark that line out and then we'll cut once I've welded them all in place. Tomorrow I'm going to shoot down the yard again because I need some flat steel. I did get angle iron to do the job, but unfortunately it's just not wide enough to make up those brackets. I could, where is it? I could cut that all up, but I'll go through more discs than it's actually worth trying to salvage those pieces of steel, so they're just not worth it. So yeah, I'm going to close this video, and the next one coming up, whenever that gets done, is going to be phase 3 and phase 4, And also, if you've been watching my motorhome build, you'll know that I was having trouble with the electrics. The other switch has turned up, so I'm going to do that over the weekend, which will give you another quick video. So thank you for viewing. Don't forget to register and press the like buttons, please. I'd be very grateful for that. And thank you very much for your love and kindness. And please be gentle in the comments, you trikers, because I know there's a lot of you out there that really don't like conversions. But this is a necessary evil, because the guy is desperate to get on the road. It's been hounding me for probably close to 3 years now. And I've been saying, no, I don't want to do another one. No, I don't want to do another one. I've had enough of trikes and I've had enough of doing them for folk. In the end, I had to give in. He's a nice guy. He really is a nice guy. So, till the next one.